Welcome, everyone. I would like to call to order the Manchester Essex Regional School District School Committee meeting on April 7th, 2026 at 6:03 p.m. And as we start every meeting, we'll open up to any public comment. If you are joining us online, please put your name and your full name and address into the chat if you have any public comments. And I don't know if you have any public comments in person.
Not for tonight.
No? Okay. So we'll hold a minute. If you are online and would like to make a public comment, please do so. All right, not seeing any tonight. We will move right along to our student reports.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you as always for joining us, Megan.
It's been a while since I've been here in person, so it's good to see you.
Good.
I will preface this with, if my calendar serves correctly, we haven't met since the last meeting as a group. So this is from Maggie and talking to people report. It's been a while. So to catch up, we've had a lot going on. My favorite, most important thing, Steam Night was such a big success, and especially want to shout out a huge thank you to Ms. Drinkwater and Mr. Janak for all of the hard work they put into that. It was such an awesome experience to get to display all of the student work and also have a lot of, there's very big community turnout. So it was really cool. And just overall a very incredible event. And I'm glad that we've gotten to continue this, even with the shift in who was managing it. It was very well done. Additionally, robotics has wrapped up for the year. They won multiple awards, but sadly did not advance to the next round of their competition, but it sounds like they had a very fun time. We also had contemporary ensemble night, which had a really good turnout. Both middle and high school contemporary / rock bands and both jazz bands performed there. And it was a wonderful evening full of music. Debate, I know one part of the team placed at states recently, which was wonderful, but they are done with competitions for the year as well. And they are now on to planning fundraisers and such for the next upcoming year. Now on to more now stuff. Spring sports have officially begun. They have practices and games very frequently at this point, full swing. And Q4 has started, which means all of our seniors are off doing their score things. So the building's feeling a little bit more empty, but it looks like they're all having a lot of fun with Senior Assassin. I've seen some pretty creative attacks there. We're coming up on April break, which means the Spain trip is coming up, which I'm very excited for. And there's been quite a bit of talk about. I know DECA at this point has moved on fully to focusing on their international competition in Atlanta. I was told that the itinerary was recently finalized and supposedly is super fun, so that'll be great. For performing arts, we have the spring concert this Thursday at 6 o'clock, so that's all high school music classes will be performing there. And then the only other thing that I really have as a heads up, at least juniors and possibly seniors, but I don't know if anyone else, and I haven't been able to discuss this with administration yet, like to reach out and ask, but we received an email last Thursday about a class action settlement against the company Naviance for a potential, what was it? It was data security breaches. So I don't have further insight into this, but it has been a topic of conversation. Like people check their email very infrequently, but when they do, they're like, oh, that looks important. So that's come up a few different times. But other than that, that's all I've currently got. So if you have any questions.
Any questions for Megan?
That is another deadline for the London, but
Yes.
of course my daughter back at the
Not necessarily a deadline. You can still sign up, but there is increased. But yes, it looks like it's going to be fun. I think we have a pretty decent sized group signed up at this point. So
and I'm looking forward to hearing about fundraisers.
yes. I think that's already being discussed. Me and 2 other students, at least that I've heard of, are working with the adults in charge to help plan some of those. So it'll be cool.
They were just talking about that, so it's on
Really?
everybody's radar. Yeah,
Good.
and I think you're up to 17.
Really? Oh, great. Yeah. We're going up. Yeah. Awesome.
So much.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have a specific chairperson's report tonight, so we'll move right into the consent agenda. I'll make a motion to accept the financial memo from April 7th, 2026. Second. Great, thank you. Any questions?
When you say financial memo, you mean the voucher?
Is that what we're, how we're reporting?
So I just had one question for Pam, but I think it'll be addressed later.
All those in favor? See notes. And I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from March 17th, 2026. All those in, any questions or concerns? All those in favor? See notes. And then I'll make a motion to approve the out of state route list. Do you have anyone speaking to that? Or?
That's just it's an athletic competition and.
Get a second.
Second.
Sorry.
It's just the annual sailing competition up in Portland.
Yeah.
That if they qualify for, they need to win it.
Any questions regarding? No. All those in favor? It's also unanimous. Thank you. And moving right along to our subcommittee reports. I think first up is elementary facilities. Teresa?
Yep, I've got a report for us. We met on March 24th. We had a two-part meeting. The first hour from 6 to roughly 7 p.m. was what we were calling a gallery walk with posters, mounted posters of the 5 designs that are still under consideration in the categories of code upgrade, addition renovation, and 3 new build designs, plus a poster of the evaluation criteria that we're using, that red, yellow, green chart. We're up around the cafeteria, and anyone from the public could come and look and put Post-it notes with their feedback on it and talk to the people who were all involved. It was a good turnout. I'd say probably 15 to 20 people who were unaffiliated with the SBC were there. They shared input verbally, and like I said, with the Post-its, all of that's being compiled with board feedback as well for review in the next meeting. Those posters we had talked about later that night to put them on display in the 3rd floor of the town hall. But for a few reasons, that wasn't the best venue, but working with Carla Christensen, librarian extraordinaire, we have them on display in the young adult room at the Essex Library. So there's also a little sheet there with QR code that people can stop in, take a look at them, and share their feedback anytime. Those will be up there until our next SBC meeting. I'll get into that in a minute. So following the gallery walk, public part of that, we had a regular business meeting. We approved vouchers to pay for the mailer that went out for the community meetings, and also the creation of the video that Pam showed you guys here at the last meeting that I missed. We are still on time and on budget. We approved minutes. And then the rest of the meeting really was just a discussion of the designs from our perspective, also sharing the input that what we were taking in from the gallery walk, the public feedback that we were getting, and coming up with, any opinions and unanswered questions. But we've been discussing these at great length every meeting. So there's not a whole lot new really there. It's just that the big unanswered question that we were hearing, from the public and also within our group from members in meetings and outside of meetings and email is, what are these going to cost and what the impact to taxpayers going to be? That's just the big question. And so it is good that we're able to evaluate these designs on their own merit without that. But until we have that information, it's really theoretical because that's going to be a huge driver of this decision. So they have gone out for estimates to the cost estimators. If you want to know more about that process, watch the meeting recording from the 24th. Christina gave, or maybe someone gave a really good explanation about that whole process. So on April 14th, next week, we have 2 meetings. And on April 14th, it's a regular SBC business meeting. And we'll have our first look at, or first review together of those estimates. And then on the 16th, 2 days later, we have a community meeting. So it's like the second half of this design review community meeting. And we'll review that info with the community. So things to keep in mind between now and then would be that these estimates are very, very rough and mainly useful to consider the designs against each other rather than as final numbers, even back of the envelope math and breaking out into, you know, a portion that's not really effective at this point. It's mostly so that we can have that information to compare against each other to come up with a preferred option for submission to MSBA. And they're going to continue to be refined once we actually start the real design process. So that's important to keep in mind. On the 14th, though, in our business meeting, we are likely to take a straw poll to see if there's a clear front runner at this point among the SBC members. And if there is, then at that point, the presentation for the 16th will be kind of tailored to that. It'll include all the information, but tailored to help the community understand what the front runner is and why, what our reasoning is for that. And things that we'll, sorry, I can't see out and in at the same things here. Things we'll be taking into consideration as we do that will be things like the project cost in total versus what's reimbursable, costs associated with phased construction, which some of these designs will call for, additional site work balanced against smaller building envelope and better use of the site, all of those considerations. So again, that presentation on the 16th will incorporate that outcome if we have one, but it won't have been the vote because we want to still take in the public input at the community meeting. And then at our meeting on April 28th, we will vote on a preferred schematic design to advance. Do you have something different than that?
I think they're gonna want us to try to close out that vote by the 16th because we have to vote for the PSR report.
Okay,
So
okay, so
I
that's
think that's the hope.
so after we take in the community input on the 16th, we'll go into business meeting mode to take a vote.
That's what I
That's stuff.
suggested they push it for.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. On April 28th, we can approve the PSR, the preferred schematic report. So that's the deliverable that has to be sent into MSBA for approval. Everything we do has to be defensible and it has to be documented. We have to be able to show all of our work. And this is one of those deliverables that allows for that. So for November, December timing for a special town meeting vote, everything is on the website. Be in touch with questions, be in touch with input. Feel free to direct people to the Essex Library to look at those, but those things will come down on the 14th because at that point they may be out of date with the next iteration. Yeah, it's going along swimmingly. One thing, it's pertinent to this report, but it's more for this committee. I have on a couple occasions, including at this meeting, taken input from someone in the public about the idea that it is actually effective to hold hybrid meetings where people can vote. And I know it's something that's come up back and forth here as we never really solidified a plan here. So I'm just going to report out and say that our SBC meetings regularly have 20, 22 people on them. We do them hybrid. Everybody is allowed to vote. Everybody participates fully, and we've had no problems. So I know early on coming back from COVID and doing this, it was kind of a question, but it might be something that this committee wants to take up at some point. So I'm putting it out there in a public meeting so that perhaps that can be on discussion in future because it really, it is effective still. There's no downside that I've seen. But that's it.
Thank you, Joseph. You're welcome.
Can I ask how much engagement the display at the library has been getting? Do we have a sense of that? Or like how many people responded to
I have no idea.
survey?
No idea, because I don't get that.
Or should be able to tell us or Rachel
We'll know
they're getting
next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay. I do think the turnout was good at the meeting, but I didn't see a whole lot of younger families there. And I know they're really hard to reach because a lot of the families that are going to benefit from this project or their kids are going to directly be impacted by the projects haven't even entered the district yet. So I sent an email encouraging that we put it up. We have a link. I see the surveys on the website, which is awesome. Can we boost it on social media? Can we, get it out? I could put it in this newsletter, but I know we want to keep the two committees separate. So maybe that's not appropriate, but however, whatever mechanisms we can use to like boost that and get it out in the time that we have while it's still relevant.
So the communications group started a discussion about this. And they landed on not putting it out because of the amount of context that one would need to interpret the documents. So I did circulate after you had sent the suggestion to the committee again and didn't really hear back from anybody.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of hanging out there.
Mhm.
I'm open to it, but if we still have that same sentiment that without Jim's explanation as to the fact that they're not really looking at plans, they're looking at massings, and what we're really looking at is the comparability of the site locations. I don't know people, what kind of feedback we're gonna get, but I'm open to doing it, and it's not hard to get it out there. if People want to try. to Get
So my,
heavy feedback in that way.
yeah,
So that's why I put it back to the communications group. Yeah.
You can just pass my thoughts along to them and they're just.
she sent your email.
Yeah, right to them to say, do we want to reconsider what the original decision was? And I really only heard back from. Well, Kim said, I'm not opposed to it, but it seemed like people were apprehensive about it to begin with, so. So Kim and I both have said the same thing and just we could check in with the group.
It just serves two purposes, not just to also get their feedback, but to get people really excited about it. Like seeing those visuals were really exciting about, you know, what the layout could be and this, how it lays on the site. You start to be able to envision it and it's just really exciting. So I want to get people excited about it. It's really positive.
I'm open to getting it out there in any way people feel.
I think we would need to put it back to. Because again, it's the communications, that's their job. So we can put it back out again, but the response we got was that. That said, once the preferred schematic, I'm trying not to use all the initials. Once the preferred schematic report is in, then we're moving into the actual design phase where it's like, what do you want this to look and feel like? And at that point, I think that it's a whole different level of engagement for interested families who are going to use this building.
Sorry, what stage is that?
This next one.
The next one, right after.
Yeah, so it's this meeting,
report.
this April 16th meeting.
No, starting in May.
Oh, starting in May.
And once they pick where it's gonna sit on site, and then they start to really design the building. Like right now, we just have blocks and we could do this type of blocking for the front of the site, this type of blocking for the back of the site. This is a block concept if you add a renovation, add an addition, but we don't really know what that's gonna look like.
There are
So they
models
start to,
so that you can see that it
but then
could.
it'll start to scale up and you'll start to see a rendering of what the front walkway would look like. And that's where there's a lot of choice involved, everything from materials, and colors to the amount of glass. And when you go back through some of the memorial school materials, that's when you started to see the little schematic on everything we sent out. That V shape. So I think that piece is coming and that's why you got all of those invites, which is because summer is going to be the big design period. Making sure we're blocking in all of the necessary subdivisions that have to happen, so they have the answers to those questions so that they can actually design.
And I think part of that too, that I'm learning along the way is that's also the process period in which we're going to find a lot of nipping and tucking. And so for the people who are the budget hawks and looking to save every square inch, you know, that's the time that this is going to happen. But conversely, for people who really want to advocate for flex spaces or for, you know, just different kinds of spaces, that's the time for them to weigh in as well. And so,
Right.
this is when, that's when I'd rather see us put a a bigger effort into specifically the families that are going to potentially be utilizing the space.
Yeah, it's gonna be extra important that we hear from them as
Right.
much as we hear from the NIPS. And
Exactly.
We want to hear from everybody.
Right. We want to broad.
We did one of our more recent conversations, we were talking about when we went into P as the schematic design phase. Memorial were like 84,000 or 85,000 square feet, it dropped back to about 77. So there's going to be considerable reduction once they know which design they're working with and how to start putting this together.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. Yeah. But we could point people between now and the end of the week toward the library.
Yes.
I don't know how that's going without a lot, but there's not a lot of explanation there, so I don't know if people are actually making use of
All right. Any other questions? Person? All right, next is finance subcommittee. I wasn't able to make the,
So we had a short meeting with a committee of one, yes. The main thing on our agenda we're actually gonna talk about today, so we didn't spend all that much time on it. But I thought, Michelle, it might be useful for everybody to hear the couple updates you gave on like snow removal and or bus.
We've got that coming.
All right, perfect.
thank you. The policy and advocacy committee, meet.
We didn't meet, but I have a newsletter here for school committee approval. And then I went today on the Hill and I had just like a brief comment to share on that. And I don't know if you want me to do that at the end as my school committee comment or now as a member of the policy and advocacy subcommittee.
That was a good time tonight.
Okay. Well, I don't know, were you there?
I was sick.
Okay. So yeah, I didn't want to speak for both of us, but for me, it was a really fascinating. I've never been to the State House before. It was really fascinating. And I think Teresa said in the past that it really helps put in perspective, like the context in which we're operating and how our district, we are struggling like with the finances and how tight things are. But we're not struggling as much as many other districts. And I wanted to put a plug in, just put a bug in plant the seeds for this committee to think about, like, it doesn't feel like absolutely vital that we advocate right now. But the fact that things are so tight and so stretched here, it's not going to get easier. And it makes it that much more important for communities like Manchester and Essex to step up and raise an alarm at the State House, because they're hearing from, like, there was a teacher from or a school committee member, excuse me, from Chelsea who spoke like very beautifully about some of their challenges. And I think they expect to hear from communities like Chelsea, but when communities like Manchester, Essex start to come to the State House and say, like, this is not sustainable, then they might be more likely to listen. So I think I'm excited about, I'm grateful to Jake for writing that chapter 70 letter, and I'm motivated to try to do some real advocacy in the future. So I plan to go back if and when it allows, and invite you all to think about that with me like in the next year or so, or whenever, because there's something coming up right in the fall, in Danvers in the fall.
Yeah.
So like right next door.
Could we use the policy and advocacy subcommittee to brainstorm?
I would enjoy that.
Full disclosure, school building committee is a far bigger time commitment than the one meeting a month that I was initially. I have at least 2 meetings every single week between the 2 committees. So I'm in favor of whatever y'all want, because I'm not going to be volunteering for additional committees next year.
Okay,
That's fair.
okay, so I'm happy to work with you on that.
Yeah, likewise. And we'll have a new school committee member coming on eventually. So if she's interested, our subcommittees, I'm assuming, will kind of get shuffled as someone new joins. So
We usually reorganize from them.
June. Great.
All right, the negotiation, well, sorry, any questions for?
The newsletter, do we
Yeah.
want to do that now or later?
Do you want me to summarize, or have you all read it? I don't want to waste your time.
I've read it.
Summarize. The school committee newsletter is for our 2 March meetings, March 3rd and March 17. The first item is the Essex Elementary School Building Project, keeping the language the same as the school building committee is using, but just really skimming the surface and directing people to the official website. I also wanted to be sure to publish the meetings. And I can link to that survey if we think it's a good idea, but it's not included in here. today I added this portion about the FY 27 budget because it is very much still in process and we do have town meetings coming up where people are going to need to vote. Constituents need to vote to approve this budget in both towns. And as far as I know, Essex is pursuing an override. And so voters need to know that and what's on the table as far as our budget and a link to that budget so that people can see it for themselves. And Pam and I finalize the numbers. That's why you see some scribbles there. The 3.5% increase is the number. I also briefly mentioned the school choice seats that we're maintaining them by just replacing the 3 exiting students. I mentioned the donation for the scoreboard at Coach Ed Field, and I thank the specific organizations and company, the bank that made that possible, the class of 2025. I list the middle school principal search, and I knew as I added a link to Pam's announcement about him so people can find out more information about it than just as written here. There's a blurb here on the teacher professional development. I thought this was really well done and nicely lays out what teachers were up to and gives people an access to resources that if they want to learn more. And then also Michelle's presentation about the capital plan, highlighting a couple of key items. Yeah, so that's it. We wanted to also talk about potentially if relevant, pertinent things are discussed tonight, incorporating that into this newsletter. Pam and I would work together to do that because we won't be meeting again until May. And so this newsletter will be what people have in hand going in, the last thing that we can communicate before going into town meeting. And so we might want to use this tie this meeting into this so that it's all wrapped up in one package. So we want to kind of what do we call it? Process approval.
The process of kind of after the fact.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how you want to vote on that.
Yeah, we'll have short meetings before each town meeting, but it'll be short.
Okay. So I don't know how you want to vote on that or.
the committee, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say. I make a motion to approve the newsletter, subject to additional revisions based on the draft that will be sent out and give authority to them to move forward. Because that's the language.
Nailed it.
Only comment I have is let's try not to make it too much longer because it's already.
I was already messing with spacing a little bit. There's only 2 pages. I'm like, I can't go over
I think 4 sentences or something, that would be fine, but maybe add like lots of things.
Yeah, I mean,
Just run out of steam and not.
the school choice piece is included in the budget, and so that might be able to just come out, you know, I'd be fine with that. So those are the types of edits that we can talk about to try to keep it as concise as possible.
And it'll go around if people can send back.
Oh, so we'll have another.
Keep tailoring it. Yeah, we just won't have a chance to bring it back here before it goes up.
No, I'm in favor of that. I just think it's a lot longer than 2 pages and people
Yeah, we're already.
got scared and not read it. Thank you for putting this together.
No problem. Thank you for your feedback.
Do we need to vote?
So,
It's one second.
Second.
Very second. Yeah. All those in favor of the motion? If that's unanimous. Thank you, Lindsay. The negotiation team did not meet. So we'll move on to our superintendent's report.
We'll start with the plastic overlap. Just shouting out that we have 2 arts events coming up in April, a spring concert this week, and then after the break, the Arts Festival and Open Mic Night. The middle high school, the 2 exciting things coming up, and we are working on the end of year master list of all of the potential events that you could put in your calendar, which we should have ready for you before the break. So I'll circulate that when that's available. I'm just tying up some loose ends. We have so much going on. I'm going to start with a shout out to the cast and crew of 5th grade play. It was It was really fun. I know they had 3 really well attended performances. So that is a heavy lift every year, but a really exciting way to bring both schools together. The kids are going to be joining each other in 6th grade. So the entire cast and crew for all the time and effort just deserve, a big round of applause for not just the performance, but the effort that goes into wrangling 2 partials into one. It's really amazing to see. And I think just over time, it's really becoming, 5th grade play has been different types of traditions for different schools, and it's kind of exciting to see it starting to take root as a joint district activity. So thrilled to see that take place. And then I left on the table a copy of The Independent. I started making a list of all of the great things that have been happening at the high school to shout out kids and programs, and it just got exhaustive. So I said, hey, Julie, why don't you join us? Give the class of 2026 a shout out, because they are off on score again, redundancy, in our presentations. And you can kind of run down all of the good things that you can find in The Independent.
Yeah, and
Your kids have been up to some really great stuff. So you should definitely have the joy of sharing. So I'm gonna stop talking and turn it over to you.
Okay. I was just reading my latest copy of The Independent. I hope I'm envisioning my face is like 3 feet by 3 feet in that room. So I'm going to try to not think about that.
you're good. You're just up in the corner.
It has been a very exciting time at MERHS. We have a lot going on. First, I could go through a lot of things, a lot of stuff Maggie covered, but we had our STEAM showcase. Which was a huge success, and it was such a great collaborative event between all 4 schools. We had such great representation. For this year, like Maggie said, a huge shout out to Liz Drinkwater and Joe Janak. They did an amazing job, but the students really helped coordinate and collaborate, and they were really running a lot of those booths. So it was really nice to see some extra student leadership, I guess, during that. Which was fantastic. We have a lot of stuff Maggie mentioned, but DECA, we had 8 state champions and 6 finalists. So our 8 state champions will be heading off to Atlanta right at the tail end of April vacation to represent MERHS at the international competition. Drama Fest, our high school Drama Fest, made it to the semifinals. So that was a big deal. That's been a long time since they have gone and advanced that far. And there were several awards for the cast and the crew. They were just so excited those weeks, which I don't know how they had the energy because they were constantly rehearsing and practicing, but they came back so excited and thrilled with their performance. So that was great to see. A couple weeks ago, we had International Week, which the World Language Department hosts every year. Michelle Magana does an amazing job. She gets people we have students present, we have staff present, we have community members come and present about international travel, and it's a great 3-day event that the world language students are able to participate in and listen to some just amazing stories about what people in the community have done all around the world. So that was really great. Moving on to other classroom things, in the social studies department, they were able to get a Zoom call with Andy Card, who was George W. Bush's chief of staff. He's the person in the photo when George Bush is reading to the children, and someone whispers in his ear that the Twin Towers were attacked. That person whispering in his ear is Andy Card. So the students were able to talk to him and have a Zoom call with him, which is really exciting and really cool. And the social studies department is also going to participate this Friday in Student Government Day. So they will have Miss Du Bois will take off to the State House and take a student with her to get to go onto the floor and participate in what happens in the State House on a day-to-day basis. What else? I think I might be halfway done. The spring concert, we have a spring concert on Thursday, but we had our jazz concert a couple weeks ago. And if you went to the jazz concert, you might have seen the world premiere of the faculty band. So that was very exciting. And I can only imagine it's going to grow in size and in talent. We'll see what happens, but it was a really great night. And the students did a great job, and there's another concert coming this Thursday. So a lot going on there. Our debate team, they did 13 tournaments this year. So that's pretty amazing. I think last year there were not quite as many, but they participated in 13 tournaments. They're just gaining interest. It's getting bigger and bigger, and Sally Berkowitz has done an amazing job as the club advisor, and they're really doing a great job. So that the state tournament, they just got a few awards, and they're ready, looking forward already for next year. Maggie mentioned robotics. The art department, there was the congressional art competition where one of our students, Grayson Brooks, took 3rd place. The art department also collaborated with Beach Street Studios, and they were able to do an art exhibit with some of the students to showcase their art in a real studio, which is very cool. And they also collaborated with 1623 Studios and did a ongoing project. So, utilizing people out in the community and getting people in the building to just help share what's going on and help teach our students. It was a really great project. And then I think finally SCORE has started. So our seniors had their last official, I guess, full day of school was last Friday. Students who are continuing with AP exams are coming in for their AP classes, but they're all on SCORE. So they are participating in a variety of different internships. There's lots of cool things that they're able to do. Everyone was able to secure something that they were interested in, so that's exciting. And we'll keep you posted when it is time for them to present their SCORE project, which will be in May. So they're off and running on SCORE. We miss them already. It is a much quieter place, as Maggie said, without them, but it's going to just lead right into senior week and prom and baccalaureate and graduation. So it is an exciting time to be at MERHS.
For our new members, do you guys want a quick brief on the SCORE and what that is? That's no.
I know.
I think I know. And thank you.
Did
Any
you want me to?
questions? No, we're good.
We're good.
I think we're good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Julie.
Not helping me out. I
Anytime.
never would have gotten it all in. Never. Right. So I'll just give one other shout out and congratulations, because she did mention Liz and Joe doing a fantastic job with the STEAM showcase. Joe just became a dad for the first time.
Oh, the biggest.
So baby was born. So they're thrilled and happy and enjoying their new baby and healthy, very healthy. All went well. So on to when people go through the slide deck, this is a link out to the documentaries that she mentioned. They are fascinating. I wanted to play them, but it's about 30 minutes long. So I'll send you the link and you can enjoy them if you haven't seen them already. So after all of that fun stuff, we've got some just general kind of businessy updates for you. MCAS is underway. I'm sure you've seen all of the postings and the signs and received your communications as parents. I would just add a reminder that even though MCAS is no longer a graduation requirement, MCAS is still our major accountability metric. So we still encourage families to place importance on it and help us out by getting their kids here to school and having them participate in the assessment. It's important for all of us to stay on top of that and realize that just because it's not the graduation requirement it once was, it hasn't shrunk in importance at this point in our overall structure. So to what Jake had mentioned earlier, the snow removal budget, I actually went to Michelle on this because I've heard the towns talking about their snow removal budgets, and it's just been a pretty extraordinary year in terms of over the past few. So we are a bit over budget, but I think we're able to account for it and manage it within the context of a larger budget. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so this past year has been higher than any recent year I could find. This past year, we spent 103,000 with our snow removal contractor, and then we paid to have the Essex roof, shoveled twice as precaution, just because of the amount of snow we had. So in total, we've spent about 120,000+. In that budget, typically we spend between 50 and 70,000, so we are north of where we should be or plan to be typically. But it's a variable item every year. Some years we don't spend much, some years we spend quite a bit. I think we'll be able to absorb that within the operating budget, not easily, but it'll come off of what our excess funds are at the end of the year, which typically goes into our E&D calculation. So it may reduce that a little bit, but I think we're okay there. I will have a presentation next month for you, a projection as of the third quarter, so we'll have definitive numbers there. But overall, our contractor's been great. It's funny, I actually went back. We've had these contractors since as far back as I can go. So they have been great, responsive, meet all our needs, and I have no complaints about that. Don't like what I'm paying them, but I can't control that, unfortunately.
You probably need to find a number unless you went back to 2015. I think that was the last time we had.
Yeah.
4 days.
I think I went back to 2010, to be real honest. Yeah, I went way back. But yeah, inflation, definitely. Yes.
And then while you're talking, we can provide just an update on the transportation contract. Our budget accounts for the renewal and potential going out to bid. Michelle's been great. We've been looking at all kinds of options, and there's even a state bid list option that I think we're going to be pursuing. So we'll share a little bit on that.
So we were planning on going out for state bid. We've actually received some interest from other companies in addition to Salter, who Salter is also interested in our business, which was very promising because typically we're hearing that a lot of bids get one response, and that's it. So you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. We have 3 companies that are interested. But we have recently learned that there's also an option of signing on and using a contract that is a statewide contract with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And in using this contract, you actually have to commit to using electric buses if funding and the buses are available. It would be at no additional cost. It would be basically at the diesel cost, contract cost. And they would apply for grants on behalf of the district to provide electric vehicles or electrification of the fleet, but we would not own the vehicles ourselves. So I think it's a great opportunity. It's no additional dollars at something that's great and sustainable, and we've been talking about, but we were a little discouraged because we were learning the price tag with it is
We were
significant.
taking meetings with Salter to investigate
Right.
doing it because we are with Green School. It is the right thing to pursue.
Right.
But it was
Electric buses are typically 2 to 2.5 times more costly than a diesel bus, so
this was a nice opportunity.
it was a
Coming away.
very good opportunity.
Factor in fuel costs. That also make a difference.
It does. So we are pursuing this. I'm going to talk to another school district who has just signed this particular state contract for their entire fleet. And we have one of our neighboring districts who's been using them for a year. So they're very happy with them. So doing a little more investigation, but I think that's the way we should most likely move. And as I stated, it would be at the diesel contract cost to us. The one caveat is our bus pricing was set 5 years ago. So we do have an escalation cost no matter who we go with next year. So we did build that into next year's budget. So I think we'll be able to cover that. And I just think it's a win-win situation. I'm looking forward to it.
And the other business item, the North Shore Special Education Consortium, we are a member district. I represent Manchester Essex. We sit on the board as the superintendents of all of the districts who are members. And so I do as you do, and we kick the tires and go over their annual budget and make some determinations. So I just wanted to pass along that they did pass the annual budget. We did pass the annual budget. It's got a 9.4% increase. We have accounted for that in our budget. We've been planning for that all along because we've been active participants in the budget build. And we're continuing with the regional transportation project. If you recall, last year we had talked about we're trying to create a regional hub for shared transportation for special education students. So if someone's coming from Rockport and coming by Manchester, Essex, can we put them on the van? I don't think it met our expectations for this year. I think we're at a break even. We had to allocate about $5,000 to get it off the ground. I think the company that they went with to spearhead the project got in over their heads, so we've had to provide some supports around them, and the consortium's done that. So I think everybody's committed to giving it at least 3 years and hoping to start to turn it into a savings opportunity for us. So we're going to continue on that. I'm just getting you up to date, and I think it's a really interesting point of comparison because they operate similar to a regional school district, but they're more so tied to a private school model in terms of tuitions and heads in and cost per student. So it also gives you a good sense of what special education costs really do. The discussion was up to 15% tuition increase because they are having their health insurance is at 15% this year, and they're having trouble holding on to staff. And I think it's just as we get into our secondary discussion about the budget, what we're dealing with here, like Lindsay has said, we are not alone in this. We are really all struggling with a lot of statewide factors that are contributing. So just doing my duty to report where they're at. And
Answer a question about that. Yeah, Mike. I was looking through their budget book today, and I did think it was interesting in trying to, 9.4 is no small jump. There's a decrease in heads, but there's also trying to build the reserves back up. So it's all the things we talk about every single year. Is the approval, is it just by the members of the group? Because it's not the communities, right? Right, okay.
Yep.
It's just the group. There's no other approval that it has to get. Okay, that's what I was wondering.
And she also went through, so Fran Rosenberg is the executive director. She went through a DESI process, checklist, and one of the reminders is we should be reporting back this year on some things. And this is one of them. So we've done it on and off through the years, depending on whether or not it was out of the ordinary. So y'all got our reminders and the report. But it is fascinating to go and sit and flip the seat. They're dealing with some facilities issues. We're dealing with managing a building project. They're working from their reserves. So it's everybody's doing the same balancing act and trying to figure out how many years in a row you can do the balancing act without it falling apart. So they do great work over there. They are a savings for us. They are our first go-to if we are seeking out of district placement. So it's a great organization, and we are very lucky to have it.
Staying still on top of that increase and accounting for it in the budget. That is sure normal for you, but no operation. But I feel like that could have been a brutal surprise if we weren't on top.
And everybody's trying to smooth. I mean, we have we're the lower population group there. So when we're working with Revere and Lynn, the impacts to their budget are significant. I don't need to recap the Essex building project. I've got my trustee remember April 16th. I'm leaving this in there so people, if they didn't see it, can definitely. And then we can go to budget update after. So I'm all set unless there are questions.
Questions, okay? Additional questions? All right, thank you very much, Pam. Heather, you are up. If you're ready.
Heather, do you need me to put up the slides? Okay.
You went in quicker than I was expecting, so.
Well, she's transitioning. I did text Julie. Only the students got those emails. Came to you. So students, parents. So we're working on getting a copy, and I will follow up with.
I can give you a copy.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah.
You've not received it.
Oh.
No.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Would you know?
So I'm not gonna call it, I don't know what it is, so let me do some. By next meeting, I'll go back on that.
They have back,
It's always the cap.
like, they lost data, right? So It's you can get like $10 and you can maybe like free, what if like it's free monitoring for a year.
We'll do our due diligence to make sure we understand the source of the email too, and ensure that it's actually right, legit,
Ready, Jill? Great. I had a quick update slide, but we've heard a lot of the celebrations, so I just want to emphasize, this time of year is really fun. There's so many great things going. I did want to share some exciting news. Our district has been awarded a grant. We are partnering with the 1-8 Foundation, who has been doing some really exciting work around our state with leading some fiscal support and professional development partnerships and building some thoughtful learning networks around Massachusetts in a few different areas of curriculum work. So the opportunity that we have is we'll be partnering with them for the next 3 years to support our ongoing implementation of the investigative history curriculum. So you may recall a few years ago, we received a grant to launch the investigating history curriculum. It is, my understanding, the only curriculum that's actually been written essentially by the Department of Education in partnership with some higher ed partners and some other local organizations like Primary Source. But they've actually written it to really deeply align with the history social science curriculum frameworks, which were updated within the recent past. But the beautiful thing is that this grant is actually helping us to expand the curriculum implementation. So our initial grant provided us the resources and support and professional development to bring it into grades 5 through 7. They are this coming year releasing grades 3 and 4. So this grant will provide us 3 years of ongoing partnership and professional learning for our teachers. The beauty is we actually get to loop in grades 3 through 7. So even though some of our teachers have been implementing this, they have done some updates to some of the curriculum resources. And as you're getting to know a new tool or platform, it takes a little bit to get your hands around it. So this will give our teachers in grades 5, 6, and 7 who've been doing it the chance to build those professional networks with other districts and colleagues who are doing it around the state, have that targeted learning support and also access to the updated curriculum resources. While we also roll it out into grades 3 and 4 classrooms, bringing us into a really nice cohesive learning experience for our students as they go through that history of social science learning throughout our district. So really exciting. The teacher leaders and school leaders from each of the schools will be going together next week to this organization where we'll get a chance to meet some other districts doing this work and launch our partnership this spring. So super exciting and exciting to have this fiscal support, but also that powerful network and professional learning opportunities. Good news there. I did want to share, we had a chance to preview the PD day with you last time. So I did just want to walk you through, I did just promise that I would give you a little snapshot of the day. I love professional development days because I feel like it's like a chance to look at the PD party and be with your peers and colleagues and learn together and get a chance to connect and network. And also, I think a lot of teachers go into teaching because at some point they've drawn to that idea of learning and keeping themselves fresh and current. And so I think the opportunity to really do that the full day together is really exciting. So our day was started. First of all, I do want to shout out our food service, which did a phenomenal job having like coffee and breakfast treats and an amazing lunch. And they just did a great job making it feel like supportive of our staff. We started the day with a keynote from Jeff Riley. I didn't share with information about him before. In partnership with our Day of AI work we've been doing, he really brought through that idea of that forecasting that impact of AI on teaching, on learning, on educators, on students, on our communities, both in things we need to be thoughtful about and careful of, and also potential opportunities and what does it mean for us. And a few points in the presentation you'll see, I just pulled a few quotes from our teachers who gave feedback on the day. And I think he really found that great balance of really celebrating the work our teachers are doing, providing us some of those cautionary mindfulness moments, but also really helping us see the potential opportunity that this shift in our field has for us. After the keynote, our teachers had a chance to go to a few different sessions. We had 2 longer sessions and then also a mini session. Longer sessions about 90 minutes. The mini sessions were about 45 over a wide range of topics. I just pulled the titles and the presenters from the topics over the few slides and a few snapshots of our educators engaging in this shared collaborative work. And teachers had a chance to pick where they needed to go. So it was based on their role, on their level, on what place they were entering in their learning, could select over the course of those 3 sessions, which they attended, and had a chance to collaborate and connect with each other. So lots of sessions. One of the biggest pieces of feedback, one of the components of feedback that came up frequently was, I was sad because I wish I could have gone to 2 or 3 in each of these different groups. So it's like that's some good feedback to hear, that teachers felt like they had multiple things that was really striking their interest over the course of that day. And I grabbed the snapshot. One of our presenters is a BU professor who's really working around that science, anchoring that real world phenomenon in your science instruction, and how do you design your instruction utilizing student understanding and questioning and inquiry. And I loved some of what he noted when he shared about his work with us, just noting that you have elementary and middle and high school science teachers with civics teachers, special educators, math teachers, reading specialists, speech therapists, music teachers, all together connecting around learning, and how powerful it is to see that integration and that real rich power, both of adults working together and that opportunity to make that authentic learning connected really deeply and truly across. So I just thought that was kind of a neat little shout out. I also want to share some of these pieces too, because one of the components of the feedback survey was, what's your takeaway? Like one specific thing. We asked them to say one strategy or tool that you're really excited to implement in your classroom. And I think the diversity of these answers is also really exciting. So I think teachers really finding a strategy, a resource, or an approach that they're going to take to either strengthen what they're already doing and reinforce their already powerful instruction, but also some opportunities for us to grow our practice and some of these opportunities that we had a chance to lean into and learn in partnership with each other. So, and definitely want to shout out. So we had a great mix of presenters. It was 50% external presenters and 50% internal. So I did want to definitely make sure I shared a great shout out to our internal presenters. Anytime our teachers can learn from and with each other, it's really exciting and powerful. And then you inherently have an embedded expert in your district that you can say, hey, can I talk to you? Or remember when you shared that, in thinking about how powerful that learning from and with peers is. And they just really did such a nice job connecting new opportunities, tools, resources, and strategies to the work that's already in place. So I want to shout them out and all their hard work and incredible efforts today. All right, that was my PD day. Any questions about the PD, or should I just keep going, Chris? What do you prefer?
Go.
Keep going. All right. So the other component that I wanted to share a little bit about was a quick overview of some curriculum review processes. We've mentioned quite a few places that it's happening. I think the challenge with curriculum review is it's not like there's a point that we're like, we are all done. It's like ongoing, it iterates, it's continuous. We're going through multiple phases. So I thought, based on some feedback, it would be a really good time to just do a quick pause to share this is what's going on, because a lot is going on. And I believe Pam shared with you like our curriculum review processes document, just to talk a little bit about what we do, why we do it. That idea of going through this process is both responsible as a school district to make sure what we're doing is meeting our needs and is current, but also sometimes there are things that can get things moving. Shift in state standards, data indicator, some other pieces that might have us say, hey, this is something you need to look at and review. And when we say that word curriculum, it doesn't just mean a book that we bought, right? Curriculum includes what we teach, how we teach it, when we teach it, how do we assess if kids have it. So we're really thinking holistically when we're talking about that word curriculum. Right now, I want to just sort of give you a quick update on the 25-26 content areas that are in these 3 different phases of curriculum review. I'm not going to walk through all of them, but just wanted to share a quick snapshot so you know some of the work that's currently happening. What you'll see on the left is some of our different content areas that are undergoing the review and what the range is. So if it's not otherwise noted, it's pre-K 12. And then on the right is, I guess status maybe isn't the best word to use, but some of the steps that we've taken over the course of this year to help inform that ongoing curriculum work. So when we're talking about something, for example, data collection, I see data collection on a few of these. Data collection includes assessment data. How are our students performing on assessment? And it includes things like enrollment data, data and trends over time, student voice and perspective, community member voice and perspective, work samples, classroom observation. So data collection is it's holistically. So we're depending on the content area, the scale, all of that, those can really be an inclusive process. So again, multiple different content areas working in at different stages. This first stage that I do idea of analyze and identify is really just trying to get to know where are we right now? Where are we currently in this curriculum work? Where do we want to go? That idea of establishing a vision. Where do we want to go in mathematics and English as a second language on behalf of our students? And then what do we need to do to get there? So we're thinking about current status, an effort of where we want to go, and where we want to go is informed by reading research and publications from the field, digging deeply into our state curriculum frameworks and standards, doing that data analysis, getting that input and feedback. And then this stage is really that work, which really takes a great deal of time, both to get our hands around calibrating with each other, making sure we're sharing current understanding, and understanding deeply about where we are and where we need to go. That next stage, after you go through that idea of an analyze and identify, you move potentially field testing is sometimes, but recommendations in field testing. So that might be what will take us from where we are to where we need to get. And sometimes it is, we may need to adopt a curriculum resource. Sometimes it's professional development. Sometimes it's course alignment and articulation. It depends on the, what that discrepancy is between where we are and where we want to be. You go through that process. So this is a quick snapshot and update of some of this work that's been taking place over the course of the last few years. For example, the history social sciences, I noted that investigating history grant, that process started 3 years ago with that initial analyze and identify where are we, how aligned are we to the curriculum frameworks or not, and really realizing with those shifts we were not. And so then that triggered a need to look at targeted published materials for certain grade bands and for some others, some realignment and redesign of curriculum maps and units. So that's just a quick snapshot example of sort of like one of the content areas that we've now taken that analysis and moved it towards some of those action steps. As well as science, technology, engineering, which is in that, again, that second stage of where we were, where we hope to go, and starting this process of thinking about what are those next step potential recommendations and what field testing. When I say field testing, what I mean by that is you could call it piloting as well. Getting a chance to try what options are out there. Sometimes it means there's potential published resources that might help meet our need. So we might try a few different ones and get our hands on it. It might include going to visit other districts or schools that might be trying it to get feedback and input from the teachers, observe it in place. So field testing itself really means like taking it for a test drive. What does it mean? What does it look like? What does it get us to where we need to go? And then that implementation stage is when you go from that initial where we want to be to what do we need to do to get there to now let's do it. So for example, our world language had been doing some of that deep review 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Last year did a lot of that, that next steps of those recommendations and the field testing pieces. And they're right now in the process of doing some of those deep updating, doing some of those networking within the professional organization around the state. And shifting some of our curriculum in a really explicit way, like the adjustment of assessments that they're doing together vertically as a whole department. So when a student's moving through, we're looking at their fluency, we really can think about what does it mean across the grades and together as a department. So so that's examples of different places that it's happening, but each individual department is maybe in a different phase, in a different step, and some of the steps that are happening within them are going to depending on the size of your department, your level, your scale. So I think that's probably a good place for me to.
Any questions for Bill? Sure.
Hi, Jake.
I love that you give us these updates.
Okay.
I think we've gotten quite a few of these in the past year. And this one feels a little more in depth than the better. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd still have love to hear some more detail about some of these, because what I don't get from this is, what are what were the recommendations that led to these kind of action bullets that you've got, or, you know, to what end is all this effort toward, right? What's changing about student experience because of all this work? And so, you know, how does it promote authentic learning or vision of the graduate or student engagement? So at some point, it'd be great to actually see what's driving these, or what the outcomes of these efforts are supposed to be. Because the checklist of a curriculum name doesn't help us understand why or where it's leading to. So with that as a reiterated request, a couple specifics. The question that I had asked Pam regarding our voucher was there was a charge for a literacy audit in what we just approved in terms of the payment. But that literacy audit implies that, you know, an implementation through ELA and literacy K-5. So I just wanted, if you would speak a little bit to where that is fitting in to this process.
Sure. For that piece, the partnership with from the vouchers with TNTP, which is an organization that's helping us actually go through this first initial stage with our English department 6 through 12.
6-12.
Yes, so that's actually supporting our phase 1 of that analysis and identify. So literally doing that the audit process. Where are we currently using in curating all of those different data sets to help us understand where we currently are based on those different inputs, and then also guiding and facilitating that work towards where we want to be in that vision, writing and developing.
And are we typically hiring somebody to help us do that initial look at for all of these?
That's
I knew we did it for K-5 literacy in part because we also changed curriculum then, but
That's a good question. I would say we have different professional partnerships at different stages, depending on the content area and what that work is. In this one, it is an opportunity to partner with an organization that's doing a lot of work around adolescent literacy around the state of Massachusetts. So it was really well timed, and that was essentially the work that they were doing with other districts around the state. In that second piece of that secondary literacy is that it's a really new part of the conversation. A lot of the literacy conversation that's been taking place has been very early foundational literacy focused. So it was a real opportunity for us to partner with an organization doing this in partnership with our state, and in partnership to help guide that. So it was a really well-timed partnership for us. Also simultaneously, while multiple pieces of these are going, it's running, you know, a little bit of like balancing, spinning plates. So making sure that all of them got to move forward with the right focus, support, and attention. And so we have had different external supports at different stages of the process, but it's not always necessarily stage 1.
so it sounds like you're using the word literacy for 6-12 very purposefully, because we don't, I mean, often we just refer to it as English or English language arts or whatever. Is there what's the reasoning for using literacy?
I'm using it casually, as interchangeably with ELA.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. My last question then, several of these have 9-12 course additions or / expansions. Is that in partnership with thinking about closing out some older courses, or are these literally add new courses to the program of studies?
Any of the ones that noted that would have already been through the process that you went through with program of studies pieces. That comes when they present and the department chairs present, and sometimes it is phasing out other courses in replacement of currency. Sometimes it's maybe a course that was not aligned and they're, you know, updating, and sometimes it's actually, for example, like the science marine biology addition, with a lot of feedback and input from the student listening sessions during that review that really raised that up as a hope and a demand for that piece. So any of those pieces was any of those processes that had been rolled out with you all, with some of the pieces that maybe courses that have been listed in the program of studies but not run, that maybe these are, some of them might be updates of it, or some of them might be taking the place of it, but
Okay,
yeah, that's the hope. You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you. Heather.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for your time. Thank you again for all the work that you've been doing.
It's good stuff. It's fun. Thank you.
I just offer one, to start point before Heather arrived here. The K-5 literacy, K-8 or K-8 literacy, because of the significant shift in methodology and the new voting, you couldn't all get done else. And it took us 3 or 4 years just to get the units of that. So I think similarly now, 612, it's very important. So it's a heavy lift for a lot of you. So I think it's been a very interesting experience to go through that. Just right. The good things coming out. Exciting stuff, lots of stuff happening.
Yeah.
I just wanted to echo Heather's comments on thanking the teacher superintendent, the other teachers, and how much that is a lot of extra work. But I think for me as a teacher, some of the most valuable and meaningful professional development experiences was from my colleagues in my building. And so I wanted to acknowledge that and that extra effort and give that thanks, extra double thanks.
That's how a lot of teacher leaders and principals and directors get started, right? It's that interest in wanting to peer lead and then build.
Yeah, it's cool. And very impactful.
So moving on to our budget update. And some town meeting.
Right, so in my notes, when last we met, there was general unbelief, but no confirmation that Essex would need the override, but we've since gotten confirmation as they in fact will be pursuing an override, and in fact that it's going to be a 2-piece override, one for schools and one for town. I think that the numbers, I don't know how relevant the town number is to us, but the way I understand it, they need about $268,000 in additional funds for town expenses, 186 for school. They have not come in. We haven't had a collaboration meeting, but we also haven't had any requests for further refinement of the budget. And my understanding is that they are comfortable with, I mean, I've listened to a couple of town meetings, I've spoken with some reps who happen to be on the building committee, and I think they're comfortable going forward with this at this point. Why I bring it here tonight is mostly just to have a conversation over how we as a group would like to approach overrides. We've done different things at different times, and different overrides have had different levels of meaning and impact. So I think the goal tonight was really just to bring it forth for a point of discussion and to see if there's any action that we should be taking over the next couple of months, or any reconsideration that we want to make of the budget. So I had sent a few, questions to start to think about coming into tonight. I guess I'll back up just for a second and kind of go back. And Lindsay kind of teed it up for us very nicely, and just note that again, this isn't just a local issue. We're working really with the full context of a statewide pending financial crisis, I guess is how people are framing it, in that special ed costs, transportation costs, state funding under Chapter 70, and then state funding to towns under that unrestricted aid is really putting a lot of pressure and putting a lot of responsibility back on towns, especially towns like ours. So the local impact is, and if you're reading the paper, you're seeing it, there are more towns needing more drastic overrides and more frequently. So I would say to look big before we look small, and that we're not alone. This is something I think many towns like ours and ourselves, we're going to be wrestling with year in and year out in terms of how to make the budget work. Part of the advocacy that I think we could build in, that Lindsay references, is something that another group that I'm part of in the region is the Regional Superintendents Group, and we harangue the legislators with these points over and over again. I just toss this in here as a snapshot of, this is our legislative platform. This is what we're going after. We're hoping that they can support us with, and they're all things that we think, regardless of whether you're a rural town or city school or a school like Manchester, Essex, these are some fundamental pieces that would have a positive impact on any. I think the through line, and why I spent time to put this in, is these are all the key, whether it's our budget, Hamilton Wyndham's budget, we are all struggling with those same key variables that are not within our day-to-day control, that are continuing to put pressure on our ability to make ends meet. So with all that said, and knowing that, I think what I'm trying to say is we are all in this together, whether you're on the Board of Selectmen or on the school, regardless of town, we all have external pressures on our finances that are making it very difficult to make ends meet. So when we approach our thinking about the override, if we can keep that in mind and then think about how we want to go forward this year, knowing that we have a couple of long-term objectives. We have the Essex Elementary project that we would really like to be able to get off the ground. And we have a long-term plan looking out to 29 to work on a large correction, a structural correction, if you will, to our budget. So knowing that Essex is going to be asking town meeting and then the voters to approve an additional $187,000 in funding for us. Questions before us tonight are we confident with our budgets? I mean, I think when we came to it, we all agreed that it was a reasonable and responsible budget, not just for this year, but for the coming years. Are we still there? And if we are, then how do you want to prepare for the potential outcomes of the override? And I propose two general concepts: wait and see, deal with it in May, or figure out a plan now and publish that plan and talk about what the potential implications are. And then if we are going down the planning route, what reductions, kind of what's on the table, what's off the table for areas to consider. Do you want us to consider programs? Do you want us to consider people? We want to try to get to it through some combination of OPEB funds and things like that. So that's kind of the big guide for our discussion. So if we want to maybe just take them in order and start with, are we still in the same place with the FY27 amended budget in terms of that being our best foot forward?
So I'll just,
Best.
I'll just say, you know, we set down this road, but we've already made fiscal decisions in order to keep things as reasonable as we can and as calm as we can. And, you know, I wouldn't want to upset that in any way at this point in particular. So I think for me, I think we should play that out. I think it's, you know, to me, the wait and see is the best strategy because we're 80% of the way there. Even if it fails, we're 80%. We've already made pretty big fiscal decisions to get us 80% of the way there.
Mm-hmm.
And if it fails, then we have to figure out what the next 15, 20% are. And we have potentially some ways to deal with that. But I don't think it's worth stirring the pot at this point, trying to discuss it all now. I think we wait to see what that is.
And thinking back to your question earlier today, last year we were looking at $2 million. So I mean, the scale is
Much lower.
much lower.
Back 40. I disagree. I think that the voters at town meeting and at the ballot need to know what they're voting on. And if we don't tell them, then they don't know. So the numbers are not just numbers. They are people and programs that if the vote goes a certain way, people, students, children will lose. Adults will lose, could potentially lose jobs, etc. I say this as an ardent supporter of the Essex Elementary Building project. I think we have a financial and moral obligation to get that building done for the kids inside that building. And also for our own budget, we can't keep dumping money into that building. So I do want to see EES built, but I actually think it will help us get it built if we're honest with people about what's on the table with the override vote and the town meeting vote, or the ballot vote and at town meeting needs to be both, right? Like people need to know all of that and they need to show up and vote which way they want for all of that. And then that passing will set us up for a more successful school vote in the fall. Because I'll tell you and then the worst case scenario is people this isn't on their radar. We're kind of flying under the radar. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, people didn't show up for town meeting. They didn't know, out of nowhere, it's like, we have to cut. I don't want to throw a number out there because it's inflammatory, but like, we have to cut programs. And people are like, well, why? And it's like, well, this failed. And then it's a whole spiral, right?
Mhm.
So I would rather lead with full information on the table, informed voters, and trust that people will take that information and vote in the way that that their hearts tell them to, and that has trended in the past bit in the direction of supporting the public schools. I don't think it has to be a fear mongering thing. I think it can just be an informational thing.
I don't know, I'm with Jake. I don't want us to negotiate against ourselves. I don't want to do a repeat of, was it last year and the year before, where we had people who've been, you know, seniors who had graduated coming back and pleading that we not cut specific programs. I would like to do that. I'm wondering though, if we can, I mean, we did consider, we had at least 3 different options, I recall. If we could maybe remind voters that here were the things we looked at, and what we're talking about is the level of services. We're not talking about expanding the curriculum. We're not talking about hiring a bunch of new teachers, right? We're talking about continuing what we had already agreed last year and voted on, something we wanted, and we're just stating the course. And here's the good news. We managed to avoid some of the increases that you'll fear. I think we can talk about how healthcare costs have been budgeted to increase a lot more than they actually did. So we can talk about efforts we've made to minimize increases. You know, the fact that we're coming in with a pretty low increase, I think is incredible. And it's a big testament to MTU and to the efforts of school district leadership to be fiscally responsible. So I'm kind of hearing both of you, but what I don't want to do is go, you either vote this or we're going to cut arts, we're going to cut world languages, we're going to cut. Because if you're going to do that, then number one, I heard enough about from teachers last year and how difficult it was for them, and not knowing until when was it May or something, are they going to be still employed the next year or not? I wouldn't want to relive.
But don't they need to know now?
Yeah.
Teresa?
I'm just going to answer all the questions and you'll see kind of where it falls here. I am still confident in a 3.5% budget. Looking every day in the news, there's another town with an override. I think Athol I saw today, it was over with $1.2 million. These are large override asks. This is a tiny amount comparatively. The town itself is trying to catch up from a couple of decades of stagnation, of not keeping up with inflation even. And so given the size of the override and the strong support last year for the override, I am very confident in this 3.5% budget. So to answer the question, how do you prepare? I also am in favor of the wait and see, again, given the strong response last year. I expect that you will be planning internally for contingencies. I think it might be wise for us, I think we talked about this at SBC, to potentially set a meeting date in case we need an emergency meeting right after the Tuesday ballot vote in Essex, but this is less than a month away. The town meeting is May 7th, or May 4th, excuse me. So this is less than a month away at this point. And while I in other years have been a strong advocate for put it on the table so that people can show up and know what is potentially at risk here. Again, it's the very small dollar value and the strong support that we had last year that makes me feel like I'd like to take this. But let's see if Essex will do exactly what Greg Fetterfield has been suggesting for many, many years, which is do a series of small overrides to keep up a little bit at a time rather than this huge, massive one. So if that's the case, then to sort of answer the approach question, well, what is the message then? Basically, in my mind, the message here is that we as a school committee have actively chosen in early planning to get all of the information out to towns to make We support the autonomy of our town's leaders in deciding how best to handle that. But here we've taken a multi-year approach that keeps us in the 3.5% range, which is predictable and stable and responsible, looking at all of the factors that go into this, and that the planned use of reserves is responsive to our town's ongoing budget pressures. But as far as the educational part of this, we are preserving our strong education. We have strong education in our two towns with this district. And that this keeping the, keeping with that multi-year plan and being responsive with the use of reserves is preserving our strong education. So that's the message. If it fails, then we have, we know the process. How many times have we had to go through this? We know what happens, and then we're going to have to look at what the options are. I don't think both our towns are in it for $500,000 of cuts right now, but there are real pressures in people's wallets. So I am in favor of letting this play out. My hope is that the town of Essex leadership will come to the table with a message that's similar to that. Like, yeah, we're doing this multi-year approach. Here's why we're choosing to handle it this way. Here's why we have it broken down between town and school. There's not one for North Shore Tech. Here's why, to help us understand all of that. But I am very confident, looking at all of the pressures that are here, that this strong education at a 3.5% growth is very responsible and certainly not worth putting our students and teachers and staff through the nightmare that has been the scare of losing a job. I'm not in favor of that at this point. That was my spiel.
I also am very comfortable with our budget at this point, as everyone on the committee has mentioned before. We will have the opportunity to talk about our budget when our motion comes up at town meeting. So everyone that's at town meeting will have an understanding of what our budget represents this year. So sure, that will be done very well, and Kate will do a great job presenting that as she did last year. I would caution against looking at what our options are now. I think it's the responsibility of Essex to decide on, town leadership, which they've done, decide on how they want to fund their budget. And in 4 weeks or in a month, we will have an understanding of where the school district stands. And at that point in time, we would have some decisions to make, but I would not anticipate having to do that. I do think it's very important to Lindsay's point, though, I do think it's very important to notify people, however we would like to do that this is something that's on the table, and I'm not sure what that looks like, because I know we have restrictions on what we can do, but if there's a way to
Staff.
share just, notification that there is, override in the town of Essex, it's important for you to, pay attention to this, and town meeting, make sure that you vote, cover those remarks, type of items get sent out, but,
We know real clearly how they can get sent to.
yeah.
I got a text message yesterday that Essex teachers didn't know that there was even an over, Essex elementary teachers didn't know. I don't know. So that just gives me pause, and the fact that we developed a multi-year plan, but the towns weren't able to get on board with the multi-year plan. So I don't view this as a multi-year solution at all. I view this as we're using a ton of our reserves, and that alone makes me uncomfortable. So I'm comfortable with this budget, with the caveat that I don't we can't keep using reserves to this degree year after year. And if we don't have access to those reserves, or we draw them down, you know, we're looking at astronomical budget increases with no way to moderate them or modulate them for the town partners. So I have that in my mind, and then I have also that the override for $185,727 in Essex results in $487,000 worth of cuts in our school, which is quite a bit. It's not like 5 school choice seats. It's a lot. And yeah, I just feel like if I can communicate in a way that doesn't cause fear. But I do hear the concerns.
So just to the point that this is our first open discussion about it.
It's not really that well broadcast even among Essex residents at this point. This is
They just
relatively new
confirmed it at the
information.
end of March, right? That there's the board of selectmen meeting, I think on the 23rd. So and we have. I don't know that anything had officially been. So I think it's just been because we do have good contacts and conversations. So there hasn't been, and I wouldn't want to get out ahead of this discussion with starting to broadcast something, because if we don't know what we're broadcasting, I think just hearing that there is one, well, people interpret it their own way and put things into action that may not be advantageous.
The warrant has been published now. It's official.
And taking a wait and see it, from me, does not mean we don't message.
Right.
Right? We talk about all the reasons that we took the actions we did and what we're trying to accomplish. We say all that kind of thing, to the point of Chris's, making a statement at town meeting in particular, but even before, right? What to me, wait and see means is that we do not start what, even if it's presented as information, results in a scare tactic. That's what I think we need to avoid.
I'm with you on that. I don't think there's a way to present the information of these are the potential cuts that would take place that don't either result in a scare tactic, an alarmist reaction because of beloved staff or departments, or that don't look like, well, why didn't you just do that in the first place? Like it's a unique opportunity with a smallish amount to see if we have the messaging that, like, if we can do this on the strength of what we do here. And like I said, I don't think our 2 towns are interested in $500,000 in cuts. Part of the messaging has to be, this is what that would be. The numbers are there. But identifying heads with that, I think this is a unique opportunity to get out of that, to test out.
And try to explain that year over year implication of cutting too short, because when you cut too short, you're setting yourself up for a higher climate next year. So I think that was the reasoning behind the 3.5% budget, to try to keep it there and keep it there next year and before.
One other thought I had too is that with this approach of, laying it out for the next 3 years of use of reserves, planned use of reserves, being responsive to our town budgets, as you pointed out, and as we all have seen, the whole state is in this right now. It's not like 4 years ago or 5 years ago when COVID was the big thing, but we were just looking at this little tiny, thing that spiraled into a big thing. Everybody's dealing with this. Like you said, the points that everybody's dealing with. So our planned use of reserves, I think, I'm not sure that we would see a solution in 2 years, but I think it's enough time for the state to be hearing from enough people that are having failed override attempts, because they are much larger asks. And for us to have a sense of whether there will be any meaningful action that comes from that, and give us a chance also, like you said, to advocate for that, where we've got that time plan. If we have our towns on board with 3.5% as a responsible target, I think by the end of that, we would have a pretty good idea of whether we could expect any meaningful action.
I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant about like the Greg Federspiel strategy of like this series of small overrides. I'm not hesitant about that. makes sense. What I don't think Greg argued for, but correct me if I'm wrong, because I wasn't at the table for all of those, was a series of small overrides and then a huge override as a correction, which is what we're depending on the state to do something potentially in a couple of years. That would be nice. I hope for that too.
Yeah.
And also if the state doesn't come through,
Mhm.
we draw down our reserves this year, we draw down our reserves next year.
Mhm.
This year, we're drawing down, it was 8%, now it's 5.5%, drawing it down further, drawing it down further. So then we have a do or die, massive override. That doesn't feel after a series of small overrides, even with using our reserves.
So Lindsay, I absolutely hear you, and I think that's worthy of discussion for the next budget.
Yeah.
I don't think that can impact this year's budget because we've already committed to that strategy.
That's
I
part of the
view this as a
challenge.
1 year. This, I'm, from what I heard at our collaboration meeting, I'm not prepared to. Personally, I don't view
And
this
we
as
as,
a 3 year.
we as a committee did not commit to that 3 years, right?
Yeah.
So that's on the table as a potential, right? We took the first year step towards that, but we have not said this is our 3-year agreed upon plan, right?
I think we could,
We could,
if we
Right,
heard
if
the
we
right
choose to.
thing from our
right?
town.
But for this year, we chose that strategy, given that trajectory, that longer term 3-year kind of trajectory or outline, right? We've chosen this strategy, given all the factors.
I guess there's nothing stopping us from staying on a multi-year small override. If that becomes the course of action, then maybe you don't need a large correction. And model that out. We model doing this until we couldn't do it anymore, but if we are getting into a habit or a routine where it's every 1 year, every other year, then that might be sustainable. We can certainly model on that going out in the future. I would say a couple of variables, a couple of things that are very different this year than last year, because we did have success with our budget last year. So we started from we had a higher starting point. So the 3.5 was attainable, and we were able to do that by kind of re-examining OPEB. So I think we have different levers in the way to see the state is working on some of the requests around transportation dollars, special ed reimbursements and things like that. So I wouldn't hold out hope, but there could be some changes there. It gives us another month or so to watch our special education audit district. Could there be changes? I mean, the changes could be not in our favor. Right? Leave that. We also do have exiting staff, so we can have, they may not be the best choices, but there could be choices that are attrition based and not let go based, that may not have zero program impact. And there may be cutbacks of staff as opposed to full layoff. So we might have some levers, and I would say one thing we do take a wait and see. We want to be very open-minded to revisiting school choice as a revenue stream and to offset the need for a cut. Yeah. And we have, it could advance the conversation we wanted to have in the fall, but you could easily bring in 20 seats and $100,000 if you wanted to. What it does is it takes off the table the whole concept that you allow them all to matriculate out, and then you think you're going to have some cuts. We're so cuspy with these classes. I don't think that you let them go and then you get significant cut options. So that's something we could revisit to look at a revenue source as opposed to a cut, and then you could revisit the OPEB. So those would be
And the activity would be just after that.
Yeah, I hate to bank it on that, but
Especially in short.
on short notice, yeah. I would probably let that one go as you develop for next year. But those would be some.
We adjusted our road pads, we could revisit that.
Yeah, I don't think any of them would be. What's the phrase I want to use? They wouldn't be recommended decisions or decisions we would make if we didn't have to, but I think looking at the state, looking at the world, looking at the things people are wrestling with, if that's the situation we find ourselves, that's where it might be a situation where we are 3 entities that have to work together, all with our individual pressures. We might have to make choices that we have to make.
This is an interesting, look at, like you pointed out, that there's not a 3-party commitment to the plan. strategy that we discussed for our, budget for this year. And I certainly was looking at it in a holistic way for multi-year. I absolutely was. But even if we do that, the towns can still choose to raise revenues however they choose. And it's simply not in our hands. And so to me, it highlights the importance of being very confident in what we've done, that I feel very confident in my service representing my town and having been part of this, been an active participant in all of this, and being willing to carry that message that this is responsible, it's smart, it's good for the community, it's good for both communities, it's good for our school community, and carry that forward. But it is a short time frame. And so anything that feels like chaos is getting thrown out there very quickly. And I've seen the impact. I'm sure you guys have too. I see how it impacts the students and I see how it impacts the teachers. And I do not want to put that level of chaos out there, especially knowing that we do have a number of levers that we might have to consider, but we can't consider them tonight in preparation for, May 4th. It's just the timing is too short, but I am just confident that this is responsible and that we can advocate for this without the scare of what you might lose. What you might lose is the strong district we built at a really reasonable rate.
And in the short term, I think what we have to figure out a way to explain this. What it does for the average taxpayer is it creates a greater burden for them down the line. So if we pull back or have to cut back $500,000, it's not going to be something that doesn't show itself next year and the need to try to climb back out of the hole. Because we'll be starting to dig a hole of using one-time monies and short-term trims to try to get us over the hump.
Too abstract.
I know.
So that, yeah,
I'll work on it.
I hear you all, and I really don't want drama either. I agree that it's not healthy. However, I do think that this will hinge on our ability to communicate our process ahead of town meeting, not just at town meeting. And I have seen the bandwidth that we have as a group and as a district and the processes that it takes to work on those communications. And I am wondering what the plan is, because the time, the effort, the workflow, approving official communications is a process. And we have an important message. We're not, if we're saying, okay, we're not gonna be specific to voters, but we are still gonna communicate how responsible this is and how important it is for our communities, but in a non-specific way, right? Like, what is our messaging on that? Who is working on that? When and how?
Well, I think we have the pieces of the message. It's all been laid on the table here. The when and the how is the key one, because we don't have another meeting until the day of Manchester town meeting.
Exactly.
So
We
in
want to
terms of-
expand the newsletter, what you're saying, and you have level services budget, retained program, do you want to add a couple studies there and then we can leverage the newsletter? It's a newsletter, will bless the text. Right?
I think that is a vehicle. Firstly, I'm really glad we have it in place.
Yeah.
Okay. Secondly, I think that is an effective vehicle that we could do that with. For something of this magnitude, so far, the newsletter has mainly been Pam and I, with thankfully some edits when people are able to. I feel that this is so important. I would want more eyes on it and more input so that you're a phenomenal writer, so that we're very specific and careful in our messaging. So there is a sense of importance there without it being this panic, right? How do you thread that needle, and how do you communicate what we're proud of about the budget while also explaining, like, we're using a lot of reserves and explaining that there will be cuts if this doesn't pass, but without saying what those cuts are, right? Like, I'm grappling with that. That's not obvious to me. So I would really want some help with that if it's going to be the newsletter.
wondering if the messaging should be of Essex to Essex. Because this really is, and Chris, you're echoing in my head. We're not proposing something that's forcing everyone into having to fund something beyond the norm. We are coming in with a basically level services, minimal average growth budget. And Essex is having a hard time meeting its assessment. So Essex is going to ask the town, the way they've structured their budget, the way they're going about it is they're asking the town for additional funds for two different portions. I think that's more part of the explanation. It's not, there may be a defense of our budget necessary at town meeting or an explanation of our budget at town meeting, but the ask, I think the explanation here is the financing mechanisms in Essex. So maybe it's a conversation with a couple of the collaboration team members in Essex about how they would like to approach this. You know, if they're going to get up and they're going to go to town meeting and do what's been done in Manchester last several times, you have to go around and endorse it. So that could be that's a whole different approach to this than we've had in the past.
Yeah, we really had no hand in this. This wasn't like a conversation, okay, the budget's coming in, and so if you can pull this year, we could avoid this. We didn't have a hand in this. This was, everything got worked out. There was as much collaboration meeting as there was interest for. And then this was decided at the finance committee level and presented. So it's not like we don't have ownership of this. And I think we do need to find out from town leaders in Essex how they are planning to, this is their ask, like you said, this isn't our ask. It's not a replenishment of reserves. It's not, this isn't our ask. And it hasn't even been, there's never been any contract.
I do think we have to be a little bit careful of saying, just because it takes the form of an override, you have to treat it special. I understand why we do that, because it has to go through an extra step. But we're asking just as much of Manchester as we are of Essex. Essex has just chosen to put it in the form of
Right.
an
That's what I'm
override,
trying to articulate.
right?
Yeah.
So we have to be careful that this isn't an Essex issue.
Right.
But the override,
It's in the form of an override, and that requires an extra step, right? Which has a higher bar than a town meeting vote, which is why we give it attention. But the ask from our budget perspective is just as big for Manchester as it is for Essex. It's just the form is different at town meeting.
I don't think I get where you're going with that. So are you suggest?
I just don't want this to become an Essex thing.
Well, it is an Essex. I mean, I see what you're saying, that we're distributing this according to the agreed upon formula, but it's Essex's choice. What I'm saying is maybe we're saying the same thing in a different way. I'm saying we don't need to blow it up like we're bringing something to the table and they've said, no, you've got to cut all this, but we're bringing it anyway. There was no discussion. There was no request or anything. This is just how they're choosing to structure the budget.
Everything we've heard from the collaboration meeting and from sitting in on FinCom and select board meetings, and I think in both towns, is that they're appreciative of the number that we came up with, right? And they recognize we took steps to keep it reasonable.
So perhaps they have a
Well,
plan.
I'm saying what I'm saying, and I don't think we
Yeah.
figure out the right language.
Yeah.
Which is last year we were at 7%, right? 7%.
It was out of the norm.
And it was out of the norm and we were battling an extraordinary healthcare increase. And there was a lot to explain it. Like if you're not just going up at 7%, there's a lot to explain. We're back down into the average. Expected, steady, stable, it's coming back as a catchphrase. So it's not like we're looking for help the way that it's structured, it's landing differently for each town and their capacity to deal with it within their normal revenue. So
can I propose something? Tony Barletta from Manchester has done a phenomenal job of explaining the articles for town meeting. And I think that it might be prudent for our committee, maybe through our chair, which might make the most sense, or a vice chair, or whoever's willing, to just write a thing up for the cricket or whatever, in the spirit of what Tony did for the other articles, saying, this was our budget process, this is a summary of it, this is like how we got here.
and then put it out there. Cause I know, like, I found his writing very helpful for understanding the $30 million of capital projects that Manchester voters are facing this spring. And I think that it would not be a heavy lift to do a similar communication, and it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be complicated.
It's like a letter to the editor.
Yeah.
I would also want to ask, is Essex already planning to do such a thing? Because that's the town administrator for Manchester. Essex may be planning to do such a thing. And that doesn't preclude our committee from saying, here's how, we got here. We're in full support of this article for these reasons. That doesn't preclude that. But I would just want to give, they may have a plan for their messaging.
But just to clarify, Tony didn't do it for the school.
No,
But he did it for,
not that I've seen yet.
yeah, he might still go now because he's doing like a series, basically.
Let's hold it notice.
I don't know. It seemed like the last one I read was kind of like, this is the process. And it seemed like kind of more of a concluding, like, this is kind of like how it all works. So it seemed the specific issue to issue, it might have been done, but I don't know for sure.
We do also, I just want to add, we do need to be really careful because when we're talking override, we cannot sell an override. We cannot influence the vote.
I don't think town meeting has been our issue. It's going to be after town meeting, and then that's going to have to be handed off to somebody, which is what you're making. I mean, we have definitely can dust off some old templated articles and refresh them for the now, and basically explain the budget process.
And what specifically is in this budget and how we got here without selling.
Yeah,
That's just very challenging because, we can talk about our budget, but our budget is independent of the town of Essex's tax.
But if we're proud of it, let's stand behind it. Let's say why we are.
I mean, we've talked about it and discussed it, and we have all of our stuff online, and
we can certainly get something into the curriculum. That's not hard. Is that if the audience we need the Manchester town meeting group, or the audience you need Essex voter post town meeting to ensure they get to the ballot?
Right, yes. So one thought on that is, it's frankly, the audience we need is Gloucester Daily Times, not Manchester. So anyone who do for Gloucester Daily Times for at least in both of them.
When you have capacity, we can
Right.
get something together and
Exchange. Would it be too late, too heavy? We've been the last couple of years doing the budget booklet as a QR code. But could we, in a year where there is an override asking what in either town, consider mailing out the budget book again? Because that's something that does make a difference when people have it in their hand and physically can see it, rather than actually for the voting population in Essex.
yeah, I'm just thinking it
Logistically, it might be. Yeah,
yeah, so it's not in that vein where it's not bend and go,
gotcha.
but
I know it's I'm not suggesting you have to, I'm just saying that might be one way to be getting the word out, because people don't look at the budget book the same way as when it comes to now.
I'm trying to like what you were saying, like I pulled up the article and what he talks about here is the general fund. And then he explains, so he talks about OPEB, the approach with that. So that could be a model, just, basically he talked this year about the general fund. And we'll specifically focus on health insurance, OPEB, and sanitation. Well, we could pick health insurance, OPEB, and reserve or something, right? And just have very short. And then I don't know if that's something.
The corollary of having Tony as town administrator would be Pam. That would be, that would be the equitable source.
Right.
and I'll tell you, my budget introduction just goes in a very different direction. It doesn't talk about override. It really just gives a quick 2-line summary of 3.5%. Steady, reasonable, responsible, and then how it supports.
Yeah, but that's all, we're not speaking to the override specifically because we can't, to Michelle's point.
Yeah.
We are trying to explain, however, the steps we've taken to keep it manageable.
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
Does that include like,
I would just back out and ask the group, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And is this solution we're coming up with really addressing that problem, or is it just broadening the scope of the work to do? And going to invite more questions. Questions are good, open dialogue is good, but are we going to start to create a concern where there isn't one? I mean, the budget we have now, my assumption going, not to ever take anything for granted, but the data shows that we're going to bring it to Manchester Town Meeting is well within the Manchester budget. I believe it has the support of both the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen. They'll speak to that and it'll pass with something around 80%. High, slightly higher, or lower, depending on whether or not it's progressive, to be honest with you. So how much of a lift in energy do we want to put into something that is pretty much in play? And really what we want to be doing is working with somebody or trying to just a group of people to help move people from town meeting to the ballot. Easy to put an article together, happy to do it. We'll certainly start getting to work on that tomorrow. That's not a problem, but I'm
I
trying
don't want to create
I'm
extra.
just trying to figure out, it's not extra work. Are we creating work that creates additional work and it has a domino effect of
Yeah, I hear
pulling us away from what we're trying to accomplish into new areas.
I don't know that it does.
I can suggest that.
That's frequently, although I will tell you this town meeting has things on the warrant that make me concerned for turnout and support of this project. Like there will be need to be effort, as typically happens on the part of community members that sort of rally and take that on. But I think that part of the problem we're trying to solve with this conversation is to have something recent from an authoritative source to point at and say, here's where you can see succinctly how we got this. This is what we do. It's right here and it's recent.
So Teresa, that's an action, a solution. What's the problem it's solving?
The problem it's solving is people that don't know where to turn with that. And so if we've got people in Essex that don't even know there's one of or two override asks right now coming up at town meeting, they don't even know that's the case. When they start to hear it, is it the same budget conversation again? What, are they coming in at 7% again? Nope, it was right here in the Gloucester Daily Times. I just read about that. They're coming in at 3.5. It's a more standard year. And it's a shift. So for me, it's a having that resource there to do the opposite, to not create more chaos.
What if we approach town of Essex to do a joint statement?
That'd be great.
On why they can explain why this, like, because they have a very deliberate reason for structuring things the way that they do. Just like we have deliberate reason for doing some of the things we do. If they could help to explain, if it could be a joint statement, it might show that we have come to this together, we've collaborated in the process up to this point, and this is the best route forward to fund all of the things that Essex needs to do. Because I think there's a story there that is aside from our budget. Our budget was pretty direct and without a lot of, there's not a lot of, there's the typical story of we start in December and we do the tentative and then we whittle it down, but it's going to be the same story we tell every year. We'll tell again. But now the decision point is more about how is the town going about making its decisions around funding pieces of certain things and others and why.
So what if we have a two-pronged approach? Reach out, see if they're willing to do that. That's a timing and willingness issue. And if so, I think that's great. But if not, at least we have some backup plan that something's coming from here in an authoritative, trusted source. But if they are, I think.
Torn on that. Because I think I've been hearing everyone say like how they're funding it is not on us. We don't explain that. That's their strategy and they'll explain that. we just have to explain why our budget is reasonable and responsible. I do think we should tease out some of the specifics, just the ones we've been including in the newsletter around reserves, OPEB, school choice. And but not just state them as facts I actually think that it's not an either or situation. Like we do that and we stand behind our budget and we're proud of it and it's succinct and it's fact-based and it's reasonable. And also approach how leaders and see if they're willing. I hope they are.
Well, again, we don't know if they already have a plan. That's the thing. I don't know if they have a plan for how they're going to, if they're going to do something.
I think if you have just like the first couple of paragraphs of your budget summary that you do, that it's like you'd be writing it anyway for the budget book, but just publish it.
I mean, the
Hopefully doesn't
selectmen meet
create
next
more work.
Monday.
What's that?
The Essex selectmen meet on the 13th. So it's pretty quick turnaround to get an answer. If they need to discuss it, like if you want to propose something, they could discuss it in their meeting. We could have an answer. But we do kind of need that information.
I think
Sure.
we need that information.
Except we have to remember, we don't have another meeting. So really, we're putting this on Pam, over the chairs to coordinate.
The way we have done it. It's going back to this, is similar to what we do in the newsletter. We draft something up, we circulate it around with some inputs and then we sign it from the committee. Used to be a pretty regular process.
As long as I'm fine with that, as long as there's a
Tired of the same thing, so we kind of back up to the committee time to resurrect it.
as long as there's a deadline saying like, if we don't hear from you by Friday, you're saying that you're fine with everything in this letter, so that the work is done in a timely manner, because we are in a time crunch.
But we're not, is our time crunch Manchester town meeting or is our time crunch Essex town meeting?
But if we're,
And if you want to restate the problem, like you've been trying to, it's really the ballot, right? I mean,
I'm not as confident with that. I know the other things on the warrant and the
Well, just
Position
basically
that-
itself out.
comment of that. I don't
Alright.
see as big a discrepancy between the town meeting and the ballot as.
good to know.
You're not concerned.
She.
No, I absolutely am. Yeah,
I see.
Maybe that's what I'm trying to say, but haven't said directly enough. I don't think I don't see our problem this year as being our 3.5% budget. I see our problem this year being the world and all of the things that are competing for people's.
And that's true for Manchester.
Against that.
That's true for.
Huh.
I would say that's true for Manchester as well.
Mhm.
Manchester's, as I said, $30 million capital projects that are gonna, is money, I think that one part of Tony's letter was explaining how much per million or something like that, household's tax bill would go up for each of the, and you add all those up, it's a lot. So I do think it would serve Manchester as well as Essex to get this ahead of town meeting.
But to me, if that's our problem, there's no messaging we're gonna do in a month that's gonna change people's thinking about the world or their place in the world.
We're going to have it on their daily life. I think that's going to be a struggle for foreseeable future.
But I don't think it could hurt.
I agree. And the thing that in particular, I don't think it can hurt is that last year we just had an override. And for extraordinary circumstances, I don't think it can hurt to have something out there specifically saying, this isn't that. This isn't the extraordinary circumstances. This is a standard budget.
Yeah, in the collaboration meeting, I was pushing about having an override at all. Which, they pushed back, the Essex Finance or Essex Town Administrator pushed back. Excellent discussion. But what he was saying is that it's a small amount. And you know, I get nervous because I think people hear override and they just think taxes go up. Nope. But his point was that since it's a small amount, that it will be palatable. So hopefully he's right, but that was an interesting perspective that he shared.
The message is to get the voters out. It will support such a thing. Period. Both times.
I will correct.
But that's where we have to be careful on. that.
Correct.
I would say.
She's gonna write something.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I think I'm gonna go on, so on the school district page, I was looking at what we.
Yeah, I'll circulate it. We can get it in as a letter to the cricket. I have to wrestle with. The Gloucester Times is helpful, but it might. We issue a press release, what they'll do with it, what they will. And it will,
They can't just take it as a letter to the editor
we can take it as a letter.
and then it doesn't get changed.
There'll be follow-up questions.
Yeah.
That will have to
Yeah.
work. Like, what's the implication? Sorry. Let me work on some.
And then the patient's nothing. I'll be like, come on, where's the drama? There is none.
Clear as mud.
There's No, it is nice to have some consensus. I mean, we're talking about how to how to approach this, not the merits of the budget. We seem to be in consensus about how we got to this point and ready to stand behind what we put forth. So that's great.
There's gotta be a way to simplify.
Good reason.
It's kind of like.
I know, but it's not always been the case.
It's like, there's got to be a simple way of trying to explain that where we are is you've been putting a little bit on, we're putting things on a credit card. So eventually it's going to catch up with us. You know, that's not
Too abstract.
too abstract.
I think maybe if you use the word reserves, comma,
Accounts of-
savings.
An ounce of prevention,
Yeah.
it's worth a pound of.
But I do think that is an important message, like. You're
The other
dipping into
line,
your
though,
savings.
that I think of as methinks the lady dog protest too much.
Is that the conclusion of our?
I think we've concluded.
We have to vote or we're good?
We're the prompts. Did we answer all your comments?
Is there any additional
Kind of.
school committee comment?
Okay, I had more comment. I'm sorry. No, wait, I've already made the comment earlier about the, I think that was my only comment. Yeah, no, sorry. I knew there was something. I forgot to say it.
All right, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor? See you guys.
Did we get approved warrants or something? We did that already. Oh, that's right. Because I know they're all packed on to the end in the material. Anyway, that was the second thing. Yeah, we did it early.